beginning of the end for you.
To the sky!
Bestowed upon you the power of the sun.
A mighty sword!
Strike while the iron's hot.
For Camelot! For Avalon!
Let the heavens rain! I am Ragnarok!
Happy Sunday, SMITE fans, and welcome back to another day of the SMITE Pro League. We are here in week number 2, day number 3, and we've got, well, 3 sets for you guys today. No SEC, we're all starting out here with the SMITE Pro League. My name is J Mac Tucker. With me is going to be Trelly Relly here on the desk for our first set of the day. And like I said, we've got quite a few of them out there for you. We're going to be starting things off with the Tartarus Titans up against the Solar Scarabs, and we're going to have even more action going on well beyond there. But Charlie, this should be a fun set at the least.
Oh yeah, there's been some trash talk happening. I mean, just yesterday we had SOT after his match against the Kings. They said in the interview, he said, "Ooh, the Scarabs, I'm shivering." So maybe there's some bad blood there. We're gonna have to see some exciting matches.
Yeah, it's gonna be SOT up against his former teammates in the Scarabs, now new solo laner over on the side of the Scarabs. We're gonna talk a little bit about those two teams and those two players individually in just a moment there. But let's take a look at the schedule to see what all of those matches are gonna be for you guys today. Like I said, starting things off with the Titans and the Scarabs. And then, immediately after that one, we're going to have the Olympus Bolts up against the Jade Dragons. And then to end out our week, we'll have the Oni Warriors and the Camelot Kings.
Yeah, looks like an exciting one here. I mean, we gotta love Sunday, man. 3 SPL sets,
good.
all of them are gonna be action-packed. Bolts versus Dragons, Warriors versus Kings. It's gonna be an exciting day for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I'm very excited about these 3 sets, specifically these first 2. I think more than anything else, I want to really see, you know, this new heat check between the Bolts and the Dragons. You know, both these teams are rising up from what they were at last year. We finally get to see what they look like up against each other here, and really how this can all affect the standings as well, because obviously these guys are all playing for those top spots. They're all playing for those chances to go into Masters, to go into seeding tournaments, and things like that. So there's a lot of implications still here in these first few weeks of play.
Yeah, trying to get top 4 is the name of the game right now. So everyone, very important, trying to make sure that their seeding is looking solid. Camelot Kings, obviously, were on top just yesterday, and now they have fallen by the wayside here. So a win for them would be huge as well. The Scarabs trying to get up to 2-3, that would be massive for them as well. So the standing's very important right now, as you mentioned.
Yeah, right now the Titans sitting at the top, the Bolts right behind them, and the Atlantis Leviathans, who were down at 6th seed to start this week, which is one of the wildest things to see, have now reclaimed themselves up at least that 3rd seed spot. So they've been seeing themselves come back a little bit on the rise here. But in that first match, we do have the Titans and the Scarabs here. And talking about the solo laner here, you know, SOT, the former solo laner of the Scarabs, now moving over to the Tartarus Titans. That means that Scarabs needed somebody else to come here. And they picked up Scary D, of all people, to pick up in that roster and kind of take that mantle back for themselves here. And Scary D, a very storied player in the SPL.
Yeah, he's definitely been around the block quite some time, and more so recently, he's been looking a lot more of that former glory. I think there's a little bit of rough patch because he hasn't been playing too much. As we mentioned, they sort of took a little bit of a break, but since he's been back in action, I think he's been looking a lot more solid. I think the Scarabs have been coming out swinging in these matches, and Scary D's been finding a lot of success in this lane. It's more so the later stages of the game where I think they really have to dial in.
Yeah, right now a lot of the Scarabs gameplay, as you say, has been that early stage. I mean, when we watched their set up against the Leviathans, they were finding success in their first 10, 15 minutes or so of play. It was that post 15 into 25, 30. That's when we started seeing the Scarabs kind of falter here. But Scary D has been a monumental, at least, boon to this team, you know, replacing SOT, who's heralded as one of the better players out there in his role, respectively. It's a large shoes to fill out there, but Scary D as well. I mean, with having multiple world championships to his name out here, I mean, it's a player that you got to put some respect on.
Yeah, I think he wants to prove that he can still compete at this level. Obviously, when you come from, as you mentioned, multiple world championships, I mean, he's been around the block, and then he gets dropped from his team. And he wants to, you know, he obviously had to role swap. Besides that, he still wants to prove that he can compete at this level. I mean, you got to have a chip on your shoulder at that point, right?
Yeah, I mean, his role in the jungle last year didn't really get him a whole lot of success, then being dropped down, now picked back up into his more premiered role here. Should be a good one. He's going to be going up against, you know, as we talked about, SOT had a game yesterday up against the Camelot Kings, now facing off against each other here. SOT being the former Scarab solo laner, he was really the one that liked to take charge. It was something that we always saw from Scary D, and that we saw from SOT, and something that he would say is, I don't even really have to do anything in some of these fights. I can just exist, and that's usually good enough for my team to make their way in.
Yeah, I got to be honest with you. Scary D's got his work cut out for him. SOT has been looking extremely solid. I mean, just yesterday against the Kings, he he was like solo carrying the game on clean. He's just been looking insane on all of these different picks. His play style also, it's one of those things you can't ban out. He can play the top meta picks like the Cthulhu that you see, the clean, but also he's got like a Nemesis solo in the back that you can't really prepare for. Those sort of things. It's something you can't teach. It's just a god pool that you have to be aware of and try to adapt to. And I don't envy Scary D's position here because trying to match up against that in the lane is going to be difficult. But as you mentioned, he's been around the block. This can't be the first time he's faced someone who has skill like this.
Yeah, I mean, SOT has a very innovative style of god pool. I mean, this is something that we really saw a lot of out of the Scarabs at the end of Phase 3 last year, where all of a sudden this new meta from just them started developing, and it forced teams to adapt to them. You know, Scream was bringing out Kali almost every single game. That forced teams to have to start banning that one. Then SOT started bringing Hades out every single game, and now we had to see Hades get banned up against them. And it really makes it so difficult to ban against these Scarabs as a whole, and as you said, to also ban up against Scary D or SOT, just because he has that very wild nature of play, that very wild god pool out here. Scary D, though, on the opposite side, a little bit more standard with his picks. He's kind of just playing towards the meta right now,
right.
But sometimes as a solo laner, you just need somebody who's good at playing what is good.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a late game team fight, you look over and you see a tanky RDO or, you know, one of these characters that already is in the meta right now, there's nothing wrong with that. You just look over and, you know, hey, my solo laner is going to run at them. He's going to get to the back lane. He's going to do solo laner things. Just because the Titans are able to adhere to a different play style where SOT can play these off-meta picks and still have success, it's more so just something you have to try to adapt to in the midst of a team fight, right? You have to say, okay, this is a different sort of play style, and we have to try to figure that out. But I think both of these teams have had very hot moments and very cold moments. I don't think either of them are very happy with how things are going. Obviously, the Titans looked a little bit better as of yesterday, but it really just depends on which one of these rosters is going to show up today.
Yeah, you never know which style of team that you're going to get out here. I mean, the Titans have had some falters throughout the season, but they've also had some very high highs in their moments. Here, Scarabs, they've been able to find a single set win, but multiple game wins, or at least very good starts up against a lot of teams. Like we said with the Levi's, they were able to find nice, you know, first 15 or so minutes of gameplay. Even Scream coming out here with some of the more wild and out there picks, like the Morgan Le Fay jungle. We looked at it and went, wow, that's a little bit weird, and then he kind of popped off with it for the first half of the game and went, oh wow, that's kind of working real nice there. So there's always some nice highlights coming out of a lot of these Scarab sets, but so far they just haven't been able to really close those sets out.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting about Scream's playstyle is when you are a solo laner and you want to itemize into like physical defense because you want to say, hey, they have a physical jungler and a physical solo laner, I can do that, or vice versa. But Scream usually just says, hey, you can go Guardian, you can go physical, I can go the opposite, and now we have pressure in this lane because they only have one form of defense. I can find these early ganks, and we're going to find that success. As you mentioned, the Morgan Le Fay jungle, something that we obviously have not seen too much of, but Scream looked real good on it in the early stages of the game, and I think that's really where the Scarabs have to tighten up. I mean, they're able to find these leads, but what can they do with it? Can they translate it into late game team fights? More often than not, the answer has been no.
Yeah, and going up against the Titans here, I mean, we've talked a lot about their solo laners here. We've talked a little bit about the jungles. I want to talk a little bit about the carries between these ones, between the duo lane here with Cyclone versus Stewart. Stewart's really been able to bring himself up since he came into the league. At one point, he was one of the most dying players in the league, but ever since Phase 3 of Season 8, he's really been able to cut down on the number of times that he's been going down, and a lot of that thanks to Inbound, who's been able to help step up and really keep him going in that lane over there. And now Stewart has been able to bump himself up to being a very well-known player and a very well-rounded player over in that duo lane.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I think Inbound he's got some good leadership qualities, making sure to say, hey, I know you're new into this league. You know, maybe we are going to go through some rough patches, but as long as we're in this lane together, we are able to find pressure. I think just making sure that Stewart is even going towards the late stages of the game is always going to be effective. And once he is, he's able to pop off on those hard carry rolls, you know, like the magical ADCs, for example, the Oleron, things like that. Even whipped out the Scotty, I believe. So interesting picks coming out of that duo lane for both of these laners, but it's more so just, are you able to be even? Because I don't think they really look for that so much lane pressure unless Scream comes over and finds some sort of gank. It's really just, let's try to make sure that no one gets behind in this lane.
Yeah, a lot of the pressure has been going towards the mid lane against both these two teams here. A lot of players try and ban out Paul. They try and take down Paul in the midst of the game, and same thing can be said over towards Bronic on the opposite side. We'll see how everything pans out in picks and bans for game number 1 between the Titans and the Scarabs here. And when it comes down to these mid laners, Bronic maybe a little bit more eclectic in his god pool compared to Paul. Paul plays a lot of the standard meta, but you don't want to just ban the meta against Paul because then he's got that weird god pool that he can bring out at any time too. So really when it comes down to these mid laners, a lot of what we see is just kind of banning out the standard, the meta. You take the Zeuses, you might take the Thoughts or the Tiamats out there. But other than that, the focus tends to kind of flex around towards these junglers, as we see already Dodgy and Erlong Shen as those primary jungle picks banned out.
Well, I'm actually surprised that the Scarabs are going to give the option of either Zeus or the Kleena to the Titans right now. They have to ban only one of them away, and they will choose the Kleena. So Zeus is certainly an option here. Paul's looking, I would say, unstoppable on this pick as of recently, but trying to get the Yemoja instead, I think they recognize that not only can Paul play the Zeus, but I think he knows how to deal with it at this point, just trying to say, hey, we can pick this pick if you want. Trying to get Aurora on something with some solid pressure, as well as the healing and just crazy amounts of control with River's Rebuke is going to be a solid pick here. But on the other side, we see they are going to go with the Cthulhu, a very strong solo pick right now. We've seen a lot of this like double Guardian, double Hunter, and Cthulhu I think is at the forefront of that.
Yeah, Cthulhu for sure has been rising back up into the solo lane meta. Specifically, him and Ardio are still kind of the top dogs when it comes to the Guardians over in that lane. Would not be surprised if that one got picked up by the Titans. This Achilles pick, though, this is something that really only the Titans are running, and it's got strong flexibility between layers and SOT, so you never quite know where this pick is going to go, Trelly.
Yeah, the Achilles, I think, is always just a solid answer to the Cthulhu. You're right to assume that it could go jungle or solo because both of them have played it. It really just depends on what they want to go for, and holding it as that flex potential is always going to help you out in the next stage of picks and bans, so we could just keep our eye on that one. I'm not sure where either one of those is going to go, but looking at the Zeus, we know exactly where that's going to go, and Paul has been looking unstoppable on this pick, as I already mentioned, so that was a no-brainer there. I think the Scarabs probably didn't want to pick the Zeus into Yemoja because, you know, walling out Zeus is always going to be something you have to worry about. The Titans are able to first pick it, and then they ban away Dodgy, another one of Zeus's counters, so they get the Zeus pretty much for free there. I think a very good strategy by them.
Well, there's one more pick now for the Scarabs here. They can choose to lock in their final carry, maybe get something for Baronic, or hold that pick. It's something the Scarabs have been doing a little bit more often, is holding Baronic's pick until after the second banning phase. Typically, that allows a lot of teams to ban away some of the more niche picks out of him. Things like the Giannis, the AMC still comes to mind, but that already has been banned away, obviously. But the Gilgamesh out here, I'm honestly a little surprised it took this long for this god to get locked in. He seems to be the hand-in-hand there. If Erlong is taken off the table, usually the next team up will just grab that Gilgamesh.
Yeah, no surprise there that the Gilgamesh was locked in. Scream has always been looking very solid on this pick. As you mentioned, if Erlong is banned, usually Gilgamesh is banned, trying to get rid of both of these early pressure warrior guardians. I mean, warrior jungles, geez. It's going to be very interesting to deal with. They just have so much level 2 fight, especially into a Zeus, something like that. So Scream picking this up, no surprise there. They are going to ban away a Wheelix. So interestingly enough, they don't think this Achilles is going in the jungle. As we mentioned, there is always that flex potential. So saying, hey, we've got a leap right now in the Gilgamesh. We don't really want to give the knockups off the River's Rebuke, that sort of thing, the Riptides. We don't want to give layers that sort of control, so we're going to ban that away. As the Titans say, the Morgan, AMC, and Thought. That's 3 bans at Veronica.
Yeah, and the Thought specifically, probably one that, you know, we've talked a lot about here on the desk, where he's just a perfect counter matchup against the Zeus because you can just outrange him so severely there. And the final ban there is going to be that Cernunnos out of the Scarabs at the very least. And then a Terra locking. We saw this with the Camelot Kings yesterday, where they locked this Terra in, went over to the support role, considering Cthulhu and Gilgamesh are already locked in. Gotta imagine that one's going over there. But this is a pick that Inbound loves. He likes these healers. He likes these very heavy control style of Guardians. But now with what's been left on the table, what options do you see Baronic heading over towards Trelly?
I mean, it has to be a Hunter, right? There are certainly different options, but you have the double Guardian composition. You already have your Hunter and your Jungle locked in. There's a few different picks open that Baronic still likes in that Mage category, but right now, it just seems this team wants to go towards those ADCs. I mean, AMC is taken away now, so you don't have too many strong mid-lane options. I would say the Janus is still something that Baronic might try to go to. Morgan Le Fay, he's been liking a little bit, but if I had to guess, I mean, Cernunnos is banned away as well, so probably there's not many mid-lane Hunters that we see too often that are available right now.
Yeah, looking back at his last few games, maybe Chiron could still be an option out there for him. He got a couple of games in those, once against, both of those actually against the Leviathans, from what I can see prior here. But a lot of options up to the Titans here. Shiva locked in, which means that this Achilles now most likely slotting itself over towards that solo lane. That's something that, you know, I talked to the SOT yesterday. I said, man, is it the same case of, you know, that the Leviathans have where Rongyu's like, yeah, I never get to touch the Shiva. It just goes over into jungle. He said it's very similar where Layers just really likes this pick up here. So Shiva and Chernabog to actually round out this roster. How do you feel about the Chernabog right now?
Well, the global pressure is always going to be annoying. I think Cyclone Spin falls on this pick a lot, where he's not trying to fight in lane. He doesn't want to take the 1v1 against Medusa. He can just sort of split push away and then join the team fight with that ultimate from wherever he is on the map. So it's a very strong pick in its own right. You're just going to forfeit a little bit of that early pressure if you are on this Chernobog. So I think Cyclone's fine with it. He plays this pick a lot, so it's not going to be the biggest concern. He just doesn't want to get too aggressed upon early. Now the Solar Scarabs have their last pick here. Once again, Moronic saving it for the very end. What is he going to pick? You mentioned the Chiron, certainly a possibility here. I think they're going to consider it just a little bit. Do they want to go for this ADC comp that comes online a little later, or do they want to find some early pressure?
Yeah, and early seems to be the name of the game out of the Scarabs, at least as history is indicated in their last couple of sets out here. So we'll have to see if Moronic does go towards a traditional mage or if he does grab one of those hunters. And it will be the Giannis. The last time that we saw him on this was up against the Valkyries. It went 12-1. I can't argue with stats like that. But then again, this pick has been very hot or cold as far as this team is concerned. Boronic's had his really strong games on it. He's also had some games where he doesn't really do a whole lot. Not that he's not doing anything or that he's just dying consistently. It's just, it's a very hot and cold pick on this player specifically. But if there is any player out there in the league right now to pick this one up, I imagine that it would have to be Boronic.
Well, J-Mac, we don't have to look at the last year's stats. This year's stats, Janice has a 100% win rate.
That's pretty good.
2 picks. As far as I'm concerned, they've won the game here. I think also matching some of that global pressure that Chernobog brings, maybe saying, hey, through space and time, we can bring the whole team wherever we want at this point. I mean, it's a very difficult tool to try and play around with. If you have this ultimate, you have to say, hey, watch our objective confirm, make sure our wards are down. I mean, at any point, that you can just come through and steal your objective away. So you have to be watching out for this Janus pick. Boronic already proven that he's very solid on it.
Yeah, but it feels like this Giannis pick does kind of swing them towards a little bit more mid-late game as far as it's concerned. Zeus is more often going to out-clear this Giannis into the mid lane.
Oh, yeah.
So when we're looking at this mid 2v2 of the Gilgamesh Giannis versus this Zeus Shiva, where do you kind of put your edge there, Trelly?
I mean, I would say the Shiva is going to be super difficult for Janus to try and deal with. Obviously, just trying to stay away from that tanky warrior early on is going to be your point of interest. But also, looking at Scream, he's going to get very aggressive onto the Zeus early on. If you get the beads down, you can probably snipe from across the map, just making sure because there's so much lockdown. So I'd have to say that probably wanting to stay away from that Zeus early on is going to be the name of the game.
Well, game number 1 between the Tartarus Titans and the Solar Scarabs is ready to go. We're going to go ahead and throw it into game with Gore and Mifflin.
And I'm excited to watch this one, Mifflin. I think this is going to be a fun set to see how things shake out. The Scarabs able to look pretty interesting up against the Titans during the Worlds run. And of course, looking pretty interesting earlier just this week. Unfortunately for them, a lot of early game leads that ended up in a 2-0 loss anyway up against the Leviathans. Hopefully, if they can find that kind of lead, they can stick with it a little longer.
Gort, I just got to make sure.
Yeah.
You shouted out our camera person, right? It's
No.
Rosie.
Oh, was it Rosie?
We got Rosie today.
I'll be honest, I'm so used to just seeing Doug's name there that my brain, like, I don't even look at that portion of the screen
Yeah, I
until
barely
about
caught my
5
eye.
minutes in when Gold Fury spawns.
Well, that's a fair reason to look over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, today joined by Rosie. Really excited for that one. And I think you're right to just kind of look at the relative power levels of these teams. I really expect the Tartarus Titans to be the ones proactive on the map around that Shiva, as you highlight. Similarly, though, Scream has got a good power spike at level 2. I'd say Gilgamesh, Shiva, Erlong Shen, those are the level 2 junglers. The, hey, don't line up against me. Not many people are going to be able to beat you out. That said, one on each side, maybe an opportunity for the fight to go either way. And surprised that the 2v2 is what the Solar Scarabs elect to take, though, in the Soul lane, just considering Cthulhu not very good at this portion of the game. He's kind of relying on that ultimate.
Yeah, he's chilling right now. And he will be for a few more levels. This is a question I have for you, and it's mainly because I can't remember. I want to say, my inclination,
Okay.
is that you're not a particularly large fan of Yanis.
Well,
But I know that Boronic has played it well enough that you're like amenable to it. Like you're not going to be like, oh my god, I can't believe they did this. They're going to lose the game. But like, he's not great either.
yeah, look, I am a traditional Smite purist. I really like just standard, couple tanks in the front, normal hunter, like an AoE mage style of
Yeah,
play.
yeah.
That's not to say that specialized compositions can't work, but that is to say that anytime Yanis is in your team comp, all of a sudden you are a specialized composition. You don't have that same level of output as a Zeus or a Ra or a Kukulkan, just that easy ability to keep waves out of your tower, start sieging, or follow up very easily on CC. Let's say Aurora finds a stun from downtown. Paul's going to toss out his shield, auto attack at once, and then chain lightning. That's probably 1,000 damage.
Wow.
Probably only 700 damage onto Aurora, because that's as much HP he's got. Stewart, first blood for himself, and early pressure in the dual lane. But back to my point, when you land CC, inbound finds a stun from downtown, or the Mire roots somebody. It's unstable Vortex and then teleport into the jungle and wait for the next one for the Solar Scarabs. Longer team fights, the name of the game for them, because Yanis essentially operates as just a secondary assassin.
And it's going to be fun to watch. I love the plays that can come about with a really good Giannis ult. Sometimes it's not even a like portal play, although those are my favorites. Sometimes it's just straight up damage. Curious to see what happened over here in the duo lane. Unfortunate for Aurora to go down that early, especially giving first blood over to Stewart, so a nice little lead for Medusa. We'll take a look at it and see how that happened, although we might have to wait a little bit. Scary D's in trouble. You mentioned he needs that ult. The dash is going to be good, and the tower is enough to get him out of here. It looks like the duo lane still getting aggressive. Aurora so low. If that stun connects, probably going to be a kill. Lucky for Aurora, like you said, jukes it out. And I have a sneaking suspicion at least how first blood might have happened over there and how they're going to continue looking for it. It has to be these Terra walls, right? And it really does come down to the Medusa damage, dude. You talk about Lacerate and Viper Shot all the time, but that was maybe the best example I've seen of it. Lightning Storm dropped in the mid lane, drop kick. Not going to connect onto layers. So the Titans, the Scarabs, they're going for the brawl, but it's only been the one kill.
That's what I'm always talking about with early pressure in the duo lane. If you tick over to level 2 first, you're going to win the fight. If you tick over to level 3 first, you're going to win the fight. And the Solar Scarabs do exactly that. So, some slight buffs to Medusa's clear ability in the most recent patches. Kind of adds up to a place where she's already a phenomenal boxer, but now Lacerate through the minion wave, Acid Spray applying the anti-heal, all makes it that much easier for him to, or for them to get pressure there. And the Solar Scarabs leverage it very well. That said, the gold lead has not extended past that first blood. The Tartarus Titans doing a good job of maintaining and even mitigating that gap, slowly creeping back in their favor. And you can see how it's happening. Cyclone Spin, soloing out the camps, the neutral farm generally going their way as well. Great split as well from the supports here. Roar still hovering nearby, will soak up a little bit more farm than Inbound has, but Inbound decided to soak up from Baronic. So maybe now Paul's just got a lead, and Paul with a lead, not so great.
Yeah, definitely something scary. Layers over here in response. Scream came over, dropped the Winds of Shamash onto Solo Troll. A lot of damage that got thrown out, but no kill that came out in the solo lane, so nothing huge that ends up happening. But pressure, and you had kind of mentioned this earlier, for the Scarabs, now that they're trying to get like the Cthulhu ult online, already been used once, they're really pushing, I think, for this Cthulhu to get ahead and really be the one that leads things for their team.
Which is, I suppose, generally the answer to the answer, right? What do you do when there's a Cthulhu on the map? Most teams decide to group up, invade the blue buff consistently because his fight and lane, his clear, not exactly the best, doesn't have the greatest boxing potential either. If you're playing Cthulhu, that dash is generally your best clear tool, and if you're using it all the time, you're opening yourself up to get soloed, especially into a counter matchup like Achilles into Cthulhu. But with the Solar Scarab showing that much presence on this side of the map and having as strong an early game piece as Gilgamesh has slightly dissuaded the Tartarus Titans from attempting to play that style, to attempting to just sit on top of Scary D. And it's opened up that side of the map a bit, but has largely limited Scream. If Scream's going to spend so much time on the right side of the map trying to facilitate this late game piece, he's not leveraging the early game strengths of Gilgamesh.
Ooh, good walls coming out from Aurora. Inbound's going to get locked down here. It's just the damage follow-up. Lightning Storm gets dropped.
Done.
Paul is looking for the kill, and he's going to be able to find it. 1-1 is what they are able to find. And so far, support for support. And now, I mean, you've got Aurora with a small lead, and you're starting to feel pretty confident about your mid 3v3.
Yeah, surprised that Aurora was able to get that lead back. Falls for first blood just a couple moments ago, but a return kill onto Inbound will alleviate some of those growing pains. And Paul was actually suffering about a half level, maybe a 3/4 of a level down. Closed that up by picking up the kill onto Inbound. So small strides for the Tartarus Titans, who do not necessarily need to play the early game too actively. With their composition, I think that they have a much stronger team fight, a much stronger 5-on-5 engagement than what we see from the Solar Scarabs. Whereas the Solar Scarabs, it's not a weak engagement, to be sure, at 20 minutes once they are stacked as 5, but it is one note. It's going to be Scary D, probably picking up Blink in that second relic slot, Blink 4, Descent into Madness, inbound, dropping his own ultimate to try and get a little bit extra damage out there, and then have additional dive from Scream, who will always be able to proc that Terra ultimate with his own Winds of Shamash. Otherwise, it's Baronic playing the edge of the team fight, and Stewart maybe lining up an ultimate or trying to deal with the dive potential of the Tartarus Titans in his own right. Whereas the Tartarus Titans, they could take a longer engagement if they so choose, thanks to the healing that Aurora has got, or they could just have Paul toss a Chain Lightning at a Descent into Madness Scary D and spread it throughout an entire team fight. Yeah. Zeus, I think, maybe slept on as an answer to Cthulhu. It's just a giant pylon. It's like an arc pylon for him to throw his lightning at.
It's something, I mean, we saw something very similar. SCC a few days ago, like an Athena was playing up against the Zeus, and it's like, cool, dash forward to taunt him. He loves this. Like, he's just going to Chain Lightning off you. Cthulhu in a very similar and unfortunate spot. This is an interesting, I guess, dynamic overall. Finally seeing Scream catch up in level. He was 7 to the 9 that Layers had, so being able to find a little bit more for himself. And you were talking about deficits, so the one that's slightly there in mid. Cyclone Spin still slightly behind. That's where you know, a lot of these small victories for the Scarabs exist, because that gold from First Blood, it's virtually disappeared. Right now it's bouncing back and forth between the two of them. There's going to be a Blink. Scream wants a little more. Paul's in trouble. Lightning Storm dropped, and here comes Cyclone Spin. They're going to turn that one around. It's 1-for-1 right now, but inbound, he's surrounded by 3. Descent into Madness from Scary D, and the walls from Aurora. Great portal gets one out of there, but did Scary D overcommit? The D-transform ends up taking too long, and the execute from Solar Troll helps lock him down.
Man, great portal from Baronic. That is the only thing that gets inbound out of that situation, because the ultimate from Aurora was just so disruptive in the middle of that team fight. Scream not able to finish off the kill, forces inbound to put himself out of position to make sure somebody falls from the Tartarus Titans. Was Paul this time around, and that's a massive pick for him. Even had inbound trained out his own life, I think I'd call that one value.
Stewart walks up, takes the purple buff away, drops the Petrify. Cyclone Spin too low. Aurora is now body blocked and locked away. Riptide's not going to get you out of there, right into a shot from Stewart. The walls as well from inbound. Well played by the duo lane from the Scarabs to find another kill.
Literally zero counterplay potential from Aurora there. The wall placement was just perfect on the Terra. You can't go around it. He was pinched. Yeah, he could not pinched, not pinced. I suppose pinched is the right word.
A little bit of both.
He was stuck, all right? He could not get out. And if he decides to walk through, we saw what happens. Even with the Riptide, stunned out immediately. I'd argue probably a little bit of luck on inbound's part. No way he's got the geometry set up for that one perfectly every single time, but regardless, able to find that one for himself, and the Solar Scarabs pull one back and keep the gold lead exactly where it was just 2 minutes ago.
Just keeping it up a little closer to 600 experience. I mean, it's just going to bounce back and forth right now between these two teams, keeping it a lot more even than what we saw. And I want to give the Scarabs a lot of credit. Earlier this week, we saw them get some pretty hefty leads early in this game. I mean, there were points where they were 6K up against the Leviathans. Downside is Leviathans are just nuts at team fights, and that's where you have to be impeccably clean. Unfortunately for the Scarabs, they weren't able to keep that up throughout all of this. This is one that gets interesting because, as you had mentioned earlier, you know, 10 minutes in now, we're hitting this mid-game point. We're going to see a lot more groupings. And around the Pyromancer is going to be one of them. Ult down from Baronic. It feels like they might want to commit a little bit more. Still a lot of capabilities from the Titans. They get that Pyromancer for free. And this is where things get a little more awkward, Mifflin. Based on what you said earlier, this is where the Titans, especially in groupings of 4 like that, they're going to start flourishing.
They will. A couple more levels, I think, until we start to see those power spikes that are really going to shift up the power dynamics of these team fights. I'm keeping my eyes on Paul's build in particular. Seems to be standard double flat penetration, Divine Ruin, likely Spear of Desolation in the next slot. Going to synergize well with the Sands of Time that he's already picked up to give him a little bit of additional CDR. I'm also keeping my eyes on Scream because he's making plays like this.
Yeah, he's trying to get the kill on Paul. Not trying, he's going to, but is he too far down? Cyclone Spin comes in, and the autos are going to be good enough. So 1-for-1 mid for jungle, but shutting down Paul, very helpful for controlling the Titans in general. But is it an overcommit? They're going to start invading over on left. It looks like they're getting a lot of pressure on the Tier 1 tower over here. Cyclone Spin maybe going to get aggressive. Good Riptide from Aurora.
Bobby?
The autos are there. Is inbound going to commit his life? The Riptide or the River's Rebuke just a little late. And inbound gets to walk out of that one feeling pretty happy.
I can guarantee you the thought process there, because that's not an ultimate Aurora misses often. He doesn't think there's a commitment. He doesn't think there's kill potential. Bobby walks into the Riptide the first time, you're like, all right, well, he's going to get out of there. Walks in the second time, it's all of a sudden, yo, I think we could kill this Terra. Like, Cyclone landed like 20 auto attacks. Maybe I can line up this ultimate real quick. A bait, I suppose you could say, from inbound. Gets himself out of there and strips away the teamfight ultimate from Aurora, and I believe even takes away one of those flowers. So, minor win on the map for the Solar Scarabs, real minor, in a one-for-one trade. Paul for Scream.
Well, I will say, and it's been my favorite thing to mention, but 140 seconds on that Rivers Rebuke, so it's going to take a while before Aurora's able to set up another play like that, based on what we saw on the right side jungle when he rotated in. Not going to be a huge deal. Stewart's going for a little bit more. The solo kill potential is so high. Beads dropped from Cyclone Spin. The kill won't happen, and Stewart only commits the ult and the dash, still able to force the Chernobog to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, Stu playing very well today, just getting a whole lot of pressure in that lane, and even just stripping the beads has opened up the potential for a rotation.
Ooh, Baronic getting sat on by Shiva,
Good Aegis,
but not going to find anything. Good ult, good Aegis, and it gets Baronic right on out of there. Inbound again seems to be the target, but again, the tier 1 will be good enough. Teleport coming through from Scary D. The Scarabs, with something like this, feel like they want to commit to something maybe to try and make up for that cooldown, but the Titans have already fallen back.
Yeah, I think the Titans were likely to push into that tier 1 tower had Scary D not teleported. Can at least fall back towards this gold Fury, but good rotation from Scary D might dissuade them from even pulling the objective. Dash forward, thought maybe we'd see a higher commitment. Instead, it's a fight in the jungle.
That's a swarm from the Scarabs.
Almost
Closed up the gap between Aurora and Layers. Felt like they could have gotten a massive kill, Stu, maybe a little slower than they needed for those to kind of perfectly line up. But still, they ward off what maybe could have been a Gold Fury, maybe could have been some aggression and a collapse from the Titans onto Scary D. And they keep things relatively neutral. Now you got to start looking at, we looked at a lot of the relics earlier. Aegis now down for Baronic, Beads down over there for Cyclone Spin, but you've got both relics for Paul, and a lot more damage that's going to be coming out of this Zeus now that you finished the Spear of Deso.
Yeah, a lot of damage output from Zeus at this point. Worth noting, Scary D uses both of his relics in that fight. Fight, air quotes, not really much of a fight there. Blink and Teleport expended, so the Solar Scarabs likely will be fighting without their Soul Eater in this next engagement. Whether or not the Tartarus Titans want to make use of this time, yet to be seen. Layers already posturing towards the gold. Tells me they've taken note.
Now they're going to start it up. Inbound is living Sentry Ward right there, so we'll be able to see them and at least communicate that one over to the team. It doesn't seem like the Titans feel completely confident. They could sneak it. Yeah, they're going to go for it. Not able to sneak it. All of a sudden, they're going to pull back. They don't want the fight, Mifflin. And you had mentioned maybe a few more levels, a couple of items left before they started hitting those power spikes that you would say favors them. I'm also looking at some of the leads. I mean, even in virtually every role, 2 levels up for Solar Troll, so that might be a big deal. But 2 levels for Baronic right now over Paul, which is something that is difficult to do.
Yeah, he's doing that OG, just Yanis, hey, I'm going to take every camp on the map and make sure I'm at the wave. It's the most efficient farmer in the mid lane. You are legitimately the most mobile mid laner in the game, so you should be able to get a slight lead, and Baronic does so very well. What are they going to do with that lead? Group up on the gold.
It's already half health for the Scarabs. Scary D walking forward. Rivers Rebuke thrown out by Aurora, and that's the jump in from the Titans. Scarabs able to get the Gold Fury. Can they get out of the fight? Damage is there. Lightning Storm a little late. A lot of ults from the Titans, and they don't have anything to show for it. They lose the Gold Fury, and the Scarabs are able to get out of there cleanly.
Can the Titans go fire here? Maybe not. Not with Cyclone Spin on the left side of the map. Tier 1 tower maybe a little bit more feasible. 2-stack in the tower. Wow. Inbound drop low.
Yeah, a lot of damage coming down from Paul. Not enough to get the kill. Solar Troll's looking for the execute. Able to miss it. Unfortunate for him, and now he's locked down. The Scarabs turn that around. Baronic gets him right back in the fight with the ult, and they are surging forward, but patiently. They're not going to overcommit to the Titans around the tier 1 despite the numbers advantage.
Yeah, no ultimates available for the Solar Scarabs and a whole lot of relics expended as well. So not a massive opportunity, but a great defense of the tier 1 and a phenomenal pick onto SOT. Should open them up some opportunities, but it's the Tartarus Titans continually playing proactively on the map. Pyromancer pulled yet again, and we saw how quickly it fell last time, even faster this time around. The Tartarus Titans get the consolation prize, and I don't know, man. This gold lead for the Solar Scarabs, the experience lead as well, they've had it the entire game. It's just not a lot to have.
Yeah, it's that, hey, man, I can, like, every single one of us can buy, like, 2 more wards than you, and that's where we're at. Like, we can afford that. and not worry about it. It's not as big a deal, like you said, as maybe it matters. It probably comes down to like individual net worth, right? With the lead that Baronic has,
I'm not doing
probably
that
able
math.
to get a little bit more. And yeah, you can see it there. And just kind of actually not as much as I thought. Only 500 separating the mid laners, which granted, when it's a 900 gold lead, that means that it is a majority to Baronic, but 500 is not a huge separator between these two. So the Solar Scarabs, like you said, a lead. Maybe not as much as they would want, but I love this presence on the map from them. The Titans just can't stand safely.
Look at the difference between builds. Despite having a gold advantage for Baronic, and we're really nitpicking here, not often something I'm going to look at, but I'm pretty sure Paul's build is slightly more expensive altogether, but he still has more items down in gold.
This is going to be a huge collapse from the Scarabs. There's the Descent into Madness, and a couple of retaliation ults from the Titans. Lightning Storm drops Solar Troll. Moving forward, the Scarabs drop 4 ultimates throughout all of that. They don't find any kills. They force out, one relic, a teleport from Solar Troll, and they force out a couple of ults, Layers, and Paul. And that's all they end up finding. And now you're starting to look at team fights and the potential that you could have. If you're the Titans, I feel like 4 ults down for the Scarabs is a great opportunity.
It is. Winds of Shamash, still one of their best team fight ultimates, so the Solar Scarabs not necessarily completely out of this one. And similarly, Lightning Storm lost for Paul means that a lot of your damage potential is gone. Instead, it is continuous pressure from the Tartarus Titans in mid with Cyclone Spin holding it down.
Yeah.
Split pushing as Trelly had called for on the desk, and so far seems to be the case, only really rotating out with that ultimate, and even then, only once so far this game. The Tartarus Titans, it's been a long con trying to take out this tower, which has only been healing. The Solar Scarabs got it back to full HP.
Yeah, this is the glory of the Scepter, right? Being able to come in, heal it up. It doesn't help too much. 18 minutes in, 19 minutes in. Yeah, that Titan's going to fall. Sorry, that tower's going to fall pretty quickly. So it does end up going down in mid. You had called it, but the split push from Cyclone Spin, that's the fun part to watch throughout all of this. Look at this engage, because he just goes over onto Scream. The dropkick is beads out. The autos are there, and he's got a 2-level lead over the jungler. Winds of Shamash used to separate, but Scream is running towards the Titan's base. There's a blink for blink, and Layers is going to continue chasing this down. Scary D tries to join Baronic. Inbound, going to join them, and the River's Rebuke is up, but do they have the damage follow-up? Lightning Storm has been dropped, but it's not enough from Paul just yet. The Scarabs still incredibly healthy. Aurora is the one going down. Scream has lived through all of this. Finally, an execute from Solar Troll is going to make it 1-for-1, and he's going to keep on going. That's a double kill for the solo laner, and he's looking to continue to chase. The damage is good. Baronic comes in, and it's the Titans that are falling. 2 of them already down, and if Layers gets out of here, it's going to be an equal trade.
Surprised that Baronic doesn't commit to that chase. Again, the fastest, most mobile god in the game, but instead decides to go pick up some farm elsewhere on the map, and that was a very split-up engagement. First off, how does Scream live for as long as he does? Able to rejoin the fight, find some CC, force some relics before finally falling down. Similarly, Scary D survives a very long time to the dive of Layers and SOT. Eventually, though, those executes, that counter matchup that you take this Achilles for, does find some value, forces out the relics from Stewart as well. Aegis used to avoid that third fatal strike, rather, and not often you get to have 3 fatal strikes in a team fight and not win a team fight. The Tartarus Titans come out even in this one. The Solar Scarabs proving that despite maybe not having as strong a composition for this portion of the game, they can make up for it with play on field.
Now, I do want to get your thoughts on this. Killing Aurora and Solar Troll versus killing Scream and Scary D. Like, it feels like solo for solo, take them off as an even, and then it's just jungle for support. So probably like slightly in favor of the Titans, maybe a little less now because the Oni Fury picked up there by the Scarabs. And so, I mean, it just back and forth, 1,600, 1,400, like not even a full 2K gold lead. 21 minutes into the game. I mean, neither of these teams, even with the lead the Scarabs have, feel like they're comfortably enough ahead to be able to get as proactive around the FG as they would like.
Yeah, not enough separation to make the risky plays. Generally, you want to mitigate risk by either finding a pick or establishing a lead, and neither one of these teams is really well suited for either of those. Neither one has a massive enough lead where they can look towards an objective, and I would argue neither one of these compositions is necessarily pick-based. It's more so both team fight. Poking and prodding more so from the Solar Scarabs, though. Baronic, again, acting as a secondary assassin, which we saw in that team fight. Just fully evacuates, comes back in, tosses out some damage. Pyromancer pulled out. Solar Scarabs are the aggressors, and they do get the objective for themselves, despite some slight presence from the Tartarus Titans on the right side.
Yeah, a few abilities that get thrown out there. I love this. I was going to ask you about, you know, if you've got Cyclone Spin over on the left-hand lane, and he's going to be split pushing. He's an ever-present threat because he doesn't have to take the long route back over to the FG fight. He can just go up and down. Granted, it might not be the best positioning for him when he lands, but it's still some way to get back into the fight. Who do you send to try and balance that out? And it feels like Boronic, despite the fact that it's not, I guess it's like global, but the portals themselves that get placed are semi-global. He's the only one who could feasibly keep up with that rotation.
Yeah, you can match the rotation, but you do not match the fight. I don't think Boronic
No,
can
you
line
don't go
up.
for the 1v1.
Yeah, can't really line up against Cyclone, and if Boronic uses his ultimate to close gap, he's lost value on his ult, whereas Cyclone is only maintaining. You want that ultimate on Yanis to be a finishing tool in the team fight or chase down potential for the rest of your squad. If you're using it just to reposition yourself, I think you've lost out on a good deal of value. And I think that Boronic is so important to the team fight of his team right now that I would prefer him actually in the 4-on-4 engagement. If anybody is sent over, maybe you send over Scary D, because you know that you're not able to match that 1v1 potential, and Cthulhu doesn't do it either, but at least has the teleport to get back into the fight. You could even send Stewart. I'm just not certain that I love Boronic there. You really want him around to make these picks a potential for the Solar Scarabs.
Well, the Scarabs right now, gold lead, finally hitting that 2,000 mark and being comfortably in their favor. Ward coverage around the FG pit heavily in their favor right now. And they're going to use that wisely. They root down Aurora and Solar Troll. They're going in for the aggression. There's the Descent into Madness, and they burn down this Yamoja. Layers is barely able to escape the ult from Boronic, but the chase down is still there. Double dash is only going to get you so far. The chase is still on, and they're going under the tier 2 here in mid. Scream, once this kills, Beads, used by Layers, Blink to get under the Phoenix, and the Scarabs are going to have to let that kill go. Scary D overcommits. Cyclone Spin takes a lot of damage, but Paul is dishing out as much as he can. Half health bars on the sides of the Scarabs. And it's whether or not they can re-engage for the Titans to make this go in. Saw it looking for an execute. No one's in the threshold. And it's a 1-for-1 trade.
1-for-1 trade, but Aurora only in the grayscale for 5 more seconds by the time I'm done saying it. And Scary D can spend the next half a minute thinking about his mistakes. So the Tartarus Titans likely do come out ahead here. If they're able to reposition, and they've already done so, might even be able to aggress towards this Fire Giant. Stewart hasn't reset. Inbound has not reset either. Cooldowns, all ultimates not available for the Solar Scarabs. Power play now for the Titans.
And they're going to use it. They're already on the FG. Solar Troll is maintaining 4 people's worth of attention. And again, when it comes to vision, the Scarabs can see this. They have so many wards in this area, but it is not enough to help them feel confident to get back in. You mentioned it with the ults down, the relics that they're lacking, and Scary D just now respawning. The Titans take advantage and finally get themselves a Fire Giant 24.5 in the game.
Despite it, though, the Solar Scarabs hold on to a gold advantage, the same one they've had for exactly 25 minutes so far. But now 25 minutes in, power spikes all relatively hit by the Tartarus Titans, now allowed to play that portion of the game that this composition was built around. It is going to become a lot more difficult for the Solar Scarabs. There are 2 avenues of play now available to the Scarabs. You either try and match up and just defend in a 5-on-5 engagement, or do what they're doing, which is looking for some picks inside the jungle. I agree with this play. I do not love the Scarabs' odds in a true 5-on-5 defense.
Well, the good news right now, it's going to be a 5-on-2/3. There's going to be the engage. River's Rebuke is up, and Yamoja already half health. Aurora trying to walk away from this one. Screams chasing him down, but the damage, the stun, and the CC chain from the Titans. It's too strong for the jungler, and he gets taken out. Solar Troll is deep within the Scarabs, and now the Titans are looking for this fight. Cyclone Spin comes crashing down. Stewart already half health, and Scary D as well trying to run away. Inbound, he's off the board, and the Titans now only have 3 standing against them on this tier 2 on left.
The Solar Scarabs, or maybe Inbound, just springs that trap a little bit too early. Had he allowed the Tartarus Titans, Aurora specifically, to walk just a couple steps further forward, maybe the damage output could have been applied more easily. Stewart essentially only gets the ultimate off in that fight. Boronic only gets 1 ability rotation. Maybe just a little bit overzealous in the initiation, and the Tartarus Titans crush that aggression, take down the Phoenix, and approach the Titan.
Now again, 3 to defend. Stewart's been doing a ton of damage this game. We'll see if him and Boronic are going to be enough. Stewart takes way too much to start this off. That Aegis does so much, but not enough to get back to the fountain. Paul drops the lightning storm. It's on the Titan. The damage is there, and the Titans are going to take game 1 in 26 minutes.
Maybe not the exact path that we saw in the last Solar Scarab set, but it is a similar trajectory. Early game lead held firmly by the underdogs throughout the entire duration of this game, and can't even call it an early game lead if they had it for the entire time. May have even lost with the lead. Maybe lost out on it in the very last couple of moments. But the Tartarus Titans, with superior team fight potential and just better objective play, were able to come out ahead and eventually win.
I still think the potential for the Scarabs, like, it was always there, right? It was just a couple of things always going wrong. The trades being like slightly less favorable almost every time, and then unfortunately for them, you know, losing out on that pick scenario that could have been a huge play for them there in the jungle. That Fire Giant changes the pace of everything. The Titans all of a sudden have a nice enough lead that they can win the game, and they take game 1 here. We're going to kick it to a quick break, and when we get back, we'll have game 2.
Titans kept this one interesting to start this game out. A pretty much dead even game all throughout the first half of it. And then the Scarabs win one nice little team fight around the Pyromancer and able to take control. But then the Tartarus Titans remind us just how strong their objective play is in this game. They pull up a fire giant, then they win a couple more team fights after that, and the Tartarus Titans are able to take game number 1. And Charlie, this is something that we talked about at the Scarabs. Their early game has been getting so much better as of late. Yeah. It's just coming down to these couple of late game team fights, so they're really kind of just starting to falter a little bit. Yeah,
I think you and Mifflin highlighted it very well, that the objective play just sort of fell by the wayside there. I think their team comp wasn't the best for the team fight portion of the game, and once, I said this a few times, once a Zeus gets Fire Giant and you have to group underneath a Phoenix and try to defend, the AoE damage is just too much to deal with right now. So the Titans take that one, and I mean, phenomenal play from SOT. The executes were on point, plenty of damage there, Cyclone's rotations, and obviously we've already highlighted how much damage this Zeus pick was able to get.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that we talk about time and time again when it comes to Zeus. It's something that, I talk with Mifflin, when the Zeus gets picked up, what are the ways to fight it? You've brought up, just try and outrange the god, and Mifflin's also talked about bringing the god, or bringing a composition around the god to where he can be a little bit safer here. And when you have things like a Yamoja, an Achilles, a Shiva, it's a lot of crowd control out there to allow Paul to have this kind of space in these team fights. And even a Cthulhu isn't enough to keep Paul down. It's just not enough dive to really stop this mid laner.
Yeah, it's hard to praise Paul without talking about the frontliners on his squad, SOT and Aurora, creating so much space so this Zeus can exist like that. Obviously, your positioning has to be like pristine to play Zeus at this level, but again, the carries and the tanks were playing so well late game to make sure that the Zeus can have the success. And I already touched on Cyclone's rotations were also very nice, well played by the ADC of the Titans as well.
Yeah, the global presence out here, even with Bronic trying to match some of that, was able to find some solid portals in some of these skirmishes. There was one that over at that mid lane fight where he's able to keep inbound alive by throwing down a nice portal. So even though it's an 0-0-5 slash line for Bronic, didn't really find a whole lot of success in the kills, we get to see a little bit of that utility style Giannis, and that's something that always comes out with a god like this. Are you playing the assassin style Giannis? I'm going to dive into the backline real quick, throw in Unstable Vortex, dip on out, lather, rinse, repeat, or are you going to play this more backline style where you have your portals ready for your teammates at all times, you have that threshold down ready to go, and you kind of just play as that more team-focused player here? That seemed to be the case for Baronic, but when it came to the team fights, it just wasn't enough because they're not able to break past the front line of the Titans.
Yeah, it seemed like they just lacked a little bit of damage on the end game. As you mentioned, Bronic was farming very well. And I mean, the whole Scarabs, the duo lane was very strong in the early portions of the game. I think just giving Paul Zeus and not being able to shut it down is such an issue. And I know Paul isn't the only one on the Titans, but you have to play around Zeus so much, right? The AoE damage, you can't group up like you want to. You always have to watch out for the chain lightning and the lightning storm, that sort of thing. So you need to figure out how to deal with that pick or ban it away.
Yeah, we'll see if that one gets dealt with or banned out here. Picks and bans for game number 2 between the Titans and the Solar Scarabs out here. And I think you're right to address that. Zeus is a problem right now, at least in Paul's hands and a couple of other these mid laners' hands. Zeus is just outright a problem that not many teams have been able to fully deal with yet. We've seen some answers to it by picking up the Thoth, being able to outrange him. We've seen some very heavy dive commit style of comps to make sure they're able to get to that backline and kill it. But as of now, the Scarabs have not banned that one away. Instead, it's the Iset Daji and the Amusin Cobb on the side of the Titans, and then Erlong, Kleena, and Cthulhu banned away by the Scarabs. That leaves open the Yamoja, and the Titans are more than happy to take that for a second game.
Yeah, as long as they take the Yamoja there and the Daji is banned, it pretty much makes sure that the Scarabs are not going to want to first pick that Zeus, at least on paper. That's what it seems like the Titans are going for here, and they're always able to confirm the Zeus for Paul by using their picks and bans this way. On the flip side, though, Kabrakan is going to be an excellent way to deal with that pick if it does come through. The walls are going to make Zeus's life pretty miserable. You have to get a Phantom Shell, or he pretty much has to relic every time those walls come down. And the Medusa, Stewart looks so great on it. I have no qualms with running that one back.
No problems with the Medusa coming through here, as you highlighted the strengths of the Kabrakan, even against the Yamoja. Kind of forces the shell really on both sides of the coin here for these two teams. Achilles going to be the next lock-in once again for the Titans. SOT had a strong performance on it in game number 1. Could go back over to it if the Shiva doesn't get locked in for the Titans, at least what we saw last time. But this is the same top 3 out of the Titans, the Yamoja, Achilles, Zeus, and these were three of the big problems that the Solar Scarabs had dealing with in Game 1. Charlie, when it comes down to these last few picks here for the Scarabs, their last 3 to go through, what are some of the adaptations they need to make to deal with this a little bit better?
Yeah, I mean, the Titans have their picks and bans down to a science. They know how to make sure they can guarantee these picks here. Even if the Achilles was like taken away by the Scarabs, they have so many options. So the Scarabs are going to have to decide right now, how are we going to shut down this Zeus? Because again, last game, 2 deaths on him earlier just wasn't enough. And the late game team fight is where he really shines. So what are you going to draft in a 5v5 setting that is going to be better than Lightning Storm? There's not a lot of options. So they're going to have to think about it. Maybe, I mean, you already have the Medusa, so the Oleron is out. Stewart obviously is going to be on that pick. But they're just going to go with the Terra and Cabrakan, double Guardian lane. And they're just going to say we have a lot of dive. I mean, they had a lot of dive last game, but it just wasn't enough. So maybe a different play style here, or pushing their leads a little bit better is the option.
Yeah, a lot of structures within this comp, though, between the Cabrakan and the Terra. Bans for Phase 2 now. Start with Cernunnos on the side of the Scarabs. This is something they banned last time out. Typically, when we've seen Medusa picked up, Cernunnos has kind of been the next go-to answer. We've also seen picks like Heimdall and Ho Yi kind of squeak their way in there. Chiron and Muzenkov have also been some of the extra answers amongst them. And as you talked about, even Oleron on the side of the Scarabs. But that could still be a pick that we go with. I mean, we've seen Medusa go towards mid. Do you think that that could be a possibility the Scarabs go with, is just go ahead, take this Medusa, give it over to Baronic, and then allow Stewart to grab that magical ADC?
Yeah, the one problem I do have with that is the fact that Oleron just comes online so late. You're already having this double ADC comp if that is the option you're going with, and Oleron especially does not want to try to deal with this Yemoja early, and I think it's just a little bit difficult to try and make that comp work. Not to say that they haven't done it before, but the Scarabs right now are already down 0-1. I think they need some guaranteed success early games so they can try and improve on their late game portion of the game. Right now, Chiron is going to be banned away, and the Cernunnos and the Chernobog are going to be banned away for the Scarabs. So they're just making sure that Cyclone does not have that global presence like he did last game. And this time, Thoth is going to be banned away. I thought this was pretty interesting because, again, Zeus does not like to deal with that range, and Baronic has a decent Thoth. Anytime you can outrange the Zeus, it's going to be a lot more easy to exist in that mid lane.
Yeah, we talked about, at length here for how much this Thoth is a crucial pick to go up against Zeus. So seeing the Titans ban that a second time when they've picked up the Zeus, very strong there. And then we've also mentioned, just with the Chiron, that Centaurus being able to have some real long-range burst damage to deal with that Zeus. So maybe another smart ban there. Also just a good ban against Baronic specifically. He played it a couple of times in their previous sets. So making sure to keep Baronic a little bit further down in that God pool. Last time it was the Giannis. It seems like the Solar Scarabs could just wait for Baronic's pick as a last option here. But if this Medusa is then going to be going over to the dual lane like you're proposing here to have this Medusa Terra lane, what are some of the picks that you would like to see Baronic go to try and answer to this Zeus?
I mean, yeah, Baronic does have a few options here. We already saw the Janus to some success. Again, the farm game was solid. It's just that late game team fight that we have to keep harping on because the Scarabs are not a bad team at getting an early lead. They've done it consistently. It's what do you do past 20 minutes to guarantee your success, this objective fight, this team fight, that sort of thing. It looks like they're hovering on this Persephone with Grasp of Death is going to be a lot more beneficial to the squad over through space and time that just wasn't connecting as much as it really needed to. The global presence isn't there. So now a lot more damage. I would say Persephone just does more damage than Janus outright, but a little bit less of that global presence.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to run through half the map with this kind of a god here. It definitely is more towards that lockdown. We've seen what BennyQ can do on this god specifically over with the Valkyries. I mean, he's been able to output insane amounts of damage on this god. I have to double take sometimes when I see Persephone's doing 75% of somebody's health bars going, oh, she hits that hard, huh? And now we get to see it over here and see how Baronic can perform on this god here, which will now leave potentially either solo or jungle as the last pick for the Scarabs with that Cabrakan. Still a little bit of flexibility with that. Now going over to the Titans here, Shiva is up. Do you think the Titans just run it back one more time?
Well, Layers does like the Shiva, and they are able to find the pressure on it early, and it looks like that will be the option here. They are going to lock it in. There is always the option of the Achilles going to the jungle and the Shiva going to solo, but as we've seen, SOC had a phenomenal game on the Achilles, and Layers has really been liking the Shiva in the jungle, so I feel like we pretty much know exactly where those picks are going. Now, though, Scream still has an option here. Again, unless the Cabrakan is going to the jungle, which usually it's not. This time around, Thor is going to be the answer. It's got some decent shutdown on Zeus if you're able to just kill him before he can get any damage off. If those beads are down consistently, Zeus is going to have a very hard time living the Anvil of Dawn, and the range stun with the wall is going to be super hard to deal with as well. If Scream's playing on point, Paul's going to have to position very well this game.
Yeah, first time we'll be seeing Thor here in the SPL at the least. We've seen it a little bit Over on the EU SCC, some notable players over there. I think Sarpei is one of those ones who really likes to play that god over in that scene, but we haven't seen him just yet in the SPL. Previously, we've seen some solo lane out of this god as well. Final K, SOT were two players that really liked running that god over there, but potentially will be Scream over here on the side of the Solar Scarabs. But with that option, you know, Thor potentially over into the solo with how much we've seen Assassins there. Cabrakan most notably has become more of a jungler out here. Is there a preference for you, Charlie, on which one you throw in jungle for the Scarabs?
Yeah, I just think that SOT plays so much Thor solo, so he probably knows that the strengths and the weaknesses of the matchup. Thor's clear, not the best. If you are hammering the wave, you're always susceptible to the gank at that point. If your Berserker's drawing the wave, you're not clearing it because the 3 doesn't fully clear the wave there. So yeah, I would say Thor in the jungle definitely more beneficial here for this comp. You pretty much just want to go full glass cannon and say, I'm going for Zeus. I mean, that has to be the option here, right? Make sure the beads are always down if you can. You don't want to be the one getting them. You want to be the one going in after the fact. If you are able to hit that, you can usually 100 to 0 before the detonate even comes out.
Yeah, I mean, the Scarabs have a lot of tools to be able to burn those beads too. I mean, Persephone ultimate, Terra's walls, if Bracken ever walks over here. So it's going to be maybe a little bit more difficult for Paul this time around to kind of hold on to that relic here. We're looking at the side of the Titans. They've pretty much drafted the exact same comp that they did last time, Tro. The only thing that's different is their Hunter here. And when you give a team that was running hot in game number 1 basically an entire run back, it feels like it could be a difficult matchup for the Scarabs here. Where do the Scarabs need to find their success to make sure that they can find a win here in game 2?
Yeah, I said Scream had to play the Thor perfectly for them to get that value, and perfectly is an understatement. Even Thor at his best is going to have a rough matchup here. It's just pretty much, can you make sure to get in, get out, that sort of thing, because most Thors, I feel like, play the sacrificial lamb, where they go in off the Anvil of Dawn, they get maybe a kill, maybe a relic, and then they aren't able to make it out. Scream's going to have to be able to get in, get out pretty consistently, which is a very rough thing to do. That's why we're not seeing Thor so much right now. You have to use your escape as your main form of damage more often than not, and whenever you are poking, you run the risk of getting caught. So I would have to say, make sure the jungle is playing pristinely. If you're whipping out this pick, though, you got to be confident.
Well, can the Scarabs tie this set up, or are the Titans going to clean sweep this one out here in game number 2 and send us home? Let's jump right in and find out.
This is going to be a fun one to watch between them. Mifflin, we get a Thor that we get to watch here, and it is going to be out of the jungle. The Cabrakan will be going solo, which doesn't seem like it needs to be said, but also given the history of these two gods over the last year, feels like that needs to be specified.
Yeah, I was projecting Cabrakan in the jungle, if I'm honest, just because I know the Solar Scarabs. It was SOT, but SOT was a Scarab, so I didn't know if that was exclusively an SOT thing, or if the Scarabs had built compositions around having Thor in the soul lane. Seems to be now that it was just an SOT thing, but Thor a little bit slept on in the jungle, I think. You've got some pretty decent build paths you can look towards. Traditional in the first couple starting items. Jotun's Wrath, Brawler's Beatstick, but really leverages Rune Forged very well. Can move into that more Bruiser style if you so choose. So keep your eyes on Scream. It's going to be a little while till he gets involved. Thor is very strong at level 3. Level 1 and 2, not so much.
Yeah, he's going to be hanging out for a little bit. Level 5, another really big mark for him. I mean, you start to see Thors go for some relatively massive ganks. We'll see what happens here. Immediately, they're getting aggressive on the layers, and the damage is there. They get the first blood
2.
like it's nothing. And that one works out so well for the Scarabs.
That's as plug and play as it gets. Just walk up, stun, double tap the hammer. I said he's not very strong at level 2 because generally you're not double tapping at level 2. You want the wall, some sort of setup, but if Scary D is going to do it for you, not really much of an answer there. No beads potential for layers, no CC immunity in the kit.
Wow, looking for a little bit more as well. I mean, one good off-the-cuff double tap here could be insane. I don't know if they want to dive the tier 1, though. And it seems like that's going to be enough. Scream, level 3 now. And he's going to start looking for a little bit of an invade, going for the experience camps. And the other thing that plays into this, again, not something we get to talk about too often, but Thor's passive maybe helping him out in a 2v2 over in the solo lane, just to give him that little extra 1-2 punch.
You just threw a very legitimate right hook. That kind of freaked me out. You're standing too close to me to be doing that. You're right. Thor gets additional power based on how many enemy gods are nearby, and in the 2v2 we'll benefit double dipping essentially in the fight. We'll get it in the majority of lanes, I suppose. Anywhere he goes, he's likely going to be matched up against layers in the engagement. Speaking of layers, I've been talking about Shiva as that feast or famine. Falling down for first blood, that's the first step of famine.
Definitely can go downhill really quickly. Already, though, looking for maybe some ways to balance back out. Red buff potentially invaded here by the Titans. Layers is about to be surrounded by 3, though. Does get the buff, but does he get out? Inbound has a little bit of a lockdown. What a great pillar to make sure he's stuck there. But where's the damage? They don't have enough just yet. Stewart joins the fray. What a beautiful Riptide. It's not going to be enough to save Layers' life.
You sure?
Unless they miss the autos, a Riptide to bounce back. I don't know if that was necessary. There's the blink, and Layers gets out of there. I don't know how they do it. Outside of some really, really good assist play from Aurora.
My mental would be utterly shattered if I'm inbound because he makes the only play that could have turned that into a kill. A perfect body block, pins him against the wall with the third ability and his own body, but no damage output. Stewart wasn't quite in range, and Veronic's at level 4 Persephone, so doesn't have a whole lot of damage there just yet either. Layers able to limp his way out. At least able to steal away the speed is Scream on the other side, so Layers survives, but what's the point in living without speed as a jungler? Yeah.
He collapses down in the sand, screams why, immediately up towards the skies. He's going to be slower now, just inherently, so maybe the rotation's coming out from the Thor, especially level 5. Granted, no mana right now for Scream to work with. Maybe one more back, and then things will go their way. It's going to be interesting to watch it. Also, a little slower pace from the duo lanes, same picks, but not quite as an explosive start for them in terms of bullying Aurora.
I'm still just my heart is just going out to inbound right now, man. I'm still thinking about it. Like,
it was such a good body block.
If inbound said in comms, what more could I have done? And I'm trying to think of it. I don't think there's anything else he could have. There's legitimately nothing. Do more damage. Simply be a different character. That's the only answer.
But if he's a different character, he doesn't get anything. There's the dunk down from Scream, and immediately Paul is just erased from the boards. Beads don't matter there. Aurora is going to be rooted, stunned, stunned again. There's the hammer, there's the damage, not enough to kill him up. Baronic instead zoned out by Layers. They go mid for mid, but this jungler, he's not going to have a disappearing act twice in a row. Now he gets sent back to the base.
Is Scream maxing out Berserker's Barrage? That did a lot of damage. That is instant. Generally, we see him max out the hammer first. If you ever watch him stream or watch him in rank, that is what he goes for. But one of the main weaknesses of Thor, Trelly brings up the fact that he struggles going into a team fight and surviving. I think it's more so the consistency of this pick in that he is just difficult to play. At the top end, we will see the hammer maxed out more often than not, just because it is your highest DPS ability. It's going to be your most consistent poke. You don't need to dedicate your body. But it's risky. You're not landing the hammer every time. I don't care who you are, how many games of Thor you've played, 10,000 hours competitive Smite play. You're not landing the hammer every single time, and that inconsistency is what makes Thor a little bit less appetizing at the pro level of play. You want to be able to do the same thing every single time predictably. Thor, generally not the god of it. In maxing Berserker's Barrage, you remove at least one question mark in your team fight. You are able to consistently apply that damage.
Now we're sitting 1,000 gold for the Scarabs 5 minutes in. I mean, finally something a little more substantial for them than we ever got to see last game. I think last game, you know, there was a point really later on that they hit 2K, but it was at a point in the game where 2K gold doesn't really mean too much. Now they have something, they have it early enough to maybe make enough of a difference between them. We'll see if the Titans map play is as powerful as it was last time around. That's what really kind of chunked down the Scarabs' leads every time they got it. But if they keep playing around these kills the way they could have, if Inbound hadn't been spotted out by Aurora, yeah, then maybe they could have done something. Good juke once again from Aurora. And, I mean, setting up, it's been what Inbound's been doing, and he's been doing a phenomenal job of it on this Terra. 2 games in a row. It's just, unfortunately, this one hasn't maybe completely shown up. Granted, he's got the 1 assist. They've done a ton. Maybe this is going to be the play for them. Those walls in the jungle a lot. There's the root, there's the stun, there's another stun. Good luck getting away from this one. Aurora throws up the walls. Riptide out of there. The suns are dropped, and then another Riptide to try and get away, but Scream up in the sky comes crashing down. That Riptide keeps him away, but not long enough. There's the stun onto Cyclone. The hammer hits him on the comeback. Layers is here trying to pull something back, but a great root by Inbound. The control from the team is just too strong. Layers trying to live through this one, but it's not gonna happen. It's a 3-for-0, and the Scarabs are kicking things off hot.
Man, Scream is just a ridiculous player. Just sets up everything there for his team. Goes in the ultimate to confirm the kill. Perfect wall afterward. Essentially lands the double tap with no needed assist assistance, no stuns needed for him. Was able to get that one, dies out afterward. Great tower aggro trade from the Solar Scarabs, and this is why I've been memeing, air quote memeing. It's not a meme. He's 80% of this team. Scream's literally doing everything. 100% kill participation in this game. Was solo invading the speed buff, controlled the early game in the 2v2 in the solo, has been just dominating across the board, and is 3 levels up now on layers.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
He's everything.
It turns out Scream's real good at the game. I do want to give shout-outs. I think Bobby did a great job in terms of setup there. I do think, like you said, Scream is the
Yeah, Bobby was there.
But the last skill
he
doesn't
landed a
happen
root.
without.
Yeah, he landed a root for sure.
So, I think you got to give credit where credit's due. We'll see what the Titans can maybe do to try and balance things out. I thought this was going to be a Gold Fury. No, it's just the Oracles that they're trying to set up for. This has become a very deadly combo that we're starting to see over. There's no way Inbound just took those away from them as well. Got the vision on the Gold Fury. So even the neutral objectives all going over towards the Scarabs right now, along with the kills. And Mifflin, if we were saying that it wasn't a substantial gold lead throughout game number 1, this one is comfortable. 3K 8 minutes in.
And 4,000 experience to boot. The Solar Scarabs, no stranger to this situation, though, have established similar leads against teams of similar caliber to the Tartarus Titans and have still struggled to close out some of these matches. So keep your eyes on them. Whether or not they can transition it into Gold Furies or Pyromancers in a minute and a half once that spawns up is going to be the separator in this game, because I'd argue as far as compositions are concerned, the Tartarus Titans are in the exact same position as Game 1. Their team fight is a lot stronger than what I'm projecting from the Solar Scarabs, but that's in an even state.
Yeah.
And we are in anything but right now.
A lot of comfort. I mean, maybe some solace going towards the Titans. Scream went up in the Anvil of Dawn. Got a lot of vision, not a lot of play potential from it. Came crashing down, so that's going to be on cooldown for a little bit here. And maybe opening some opportunities. Going for the invade, red buff. They've got 4 Scarabs standing by. 3 Titans that might retaliate. Paul a little late to the fight, so it's a Roar and Layers first up. There's going to be the buff going towards Scream. The damage is good, though. Paul is able to turn one big kill over to them, and he's going to pick up a second Inbound, trying to run away. Scary D, Baronic, they're here for the help, but Cyclone Spin's getting aggressive, and Scary D doesn't have the damage necessary to turn this around. It is 4 kills up for the Titans. Paul somehow still alive, and Scary D is just the last one on the checklist for the Deicide. He's tanky, though, and it's going to take a while to chase him down. They've got enough CC, enough stuns, and enough lockdown to do it. And that's a 10-minute Deicide for the Titans.
That might be the fastest caster's curse I've ever given over, Gore. The Solar Scarabs, no stranger to massive leads in the early game, have struggled historically to turn it into something substantial. Gold Furies, Pyromancers, generally where this team has fumbled in the past, and lo and behold, it happens here yet again. The Tartarus Titans in one fell swoop have not just mitigated the lead, but taken it for themselves in convincing fashion. I think the through line is the 2 win conditions for every single team fight were the 2 members to die first for the Solar Scarabs. Both Scream and Inbound removed with extreme prejudice.
And once again, Scream's up on the Anvil of Dawn. Looks like he might be able to steal away a Greater Scorpion, so that's going to be some gold and experience back towards the team. But Mifflin, lo and behold, what was 3,000 turns into 0 incredibly fast. Maybe this Pyromancer. It's I want to say a comfort pick to be able to pick up, pull some of that gold back in their favor. You had mentioned it, though, going into that, in that it felt like it should be a Titans win in team fights if things were even. And even behind, they get a win in a team fight. So maybe not where they want to go. It's a Transcendence now picked up for Scream. So it feels like after an explosive start, that might slow some things down.
It would. I'm sure he was kind of playing around the idea that he was going to be 3 levels up when he finished that Transcendence. Now only 1 level in the lead, but still will benefit from the CDR once it's stacked up. Still a great infusion of power and still nursing about a half level to a level lead over Layers in the jungle. But the Solar Scarabs, that is a major tilter. And this entire match has been a series of major tilters for him. The dropped kill early on onto Layers, this massive turnaround team fight to objectives for the Tartarus Titans. It really just feels like even when the Solar Scarabs have got everything going right for them, they can't just quite do enough.
Well, now they're trying to get something done over on solo lane. There's a lot of stuns missed by Scary D. And now Solar Troll turns one around. Piranha's going to be here, but Layers is coming in. Scream misses the damage from the hammer. They're looking to put him down, and they will get rid of SOT, but at what cost? Layers does trade it out, so it's 2 for 1. Still favorable for the Scarabs.
Yeah, Paul just barely clips Scream with the ultimate. Does very well hold on to the detonate until after the Aegis from Thor to confirm that kill, but a superior rotation for Baronic is able to secure the team fight win there. Maybe even a little bit more from Baronic, I thought, as he chased Paul throughout the jungle, but not sure what a Persephone is going to do lined up against the Zeus. Am sure of what Paul, or Aurora rather, has been up to, and he's been picking flowers on the other side of the map. No response from the Solar Scarabs means the Obelisk is going to be favoring the Tartarus Titans for a little bit, but the conversation, as it always has been for this match, is can the Tartarus Titans hold on until a late game team fight? Can they make it to that 20 or so minute mark without falling too far behind? There was a concern for a moment from me that it wasn't going to be the case.
Yeah.
The Solar Scarabs were looking dominant on the map, but even in a 2-for-1 trade, the gold lead still largely mitigated. Experience been closed up and even shifted the lead in some parts of the map. Paul now 1 level on Baronic. The Scarabs still certainly in the lead, but is it enough? I'm concerned.
I mean, yeah, you want to talk about a fumble. It's a great play from the Titans that gets those kills, but a deicide 10 minutes in, when you're 3K up and losing so much after the fact. It's going back to, you know, the 1K, 1.5, kind of approaching 2K, getting some of that gold back in your favor. Doesn't give me as much security. Aurora is just out of there. Manages to stay alive through all of that. I mean, the prots that he's getting, not a whole ton of them, but what he's getting, just put in as much work as they could have to make sure he doesn't die. Well, run it back one more time. I see 4 Scarabs around a red buff, but this time there's no presence from the Titans. But it is still secured there, thanks to Layers. So the Scarabs are going to be maybe going a little aggressive with not a lot to show. Well, other than the kill.
Well, maybe if Scream could find something up into the air. This is just a scouting ultimate. Didn't have a whole lot of vision. Finds a roar.
And now he's going to find the stun. There's the lockdown. That's the CC. It didn't work part 1. Part 2, it's just fine. Now they're going to be able to strip some away, but it's a kill for a kill. Baronic goes down for a roar, and inbound is low. Paul gets damage onto Scream, and Layers is going for the chase. Is the slow going to be there? Do they have enough of the lockdown? They dodge out the ult from Stuart, and that's the leap in from Cyclone, the lightning storm from Paul, and a double kill for the mid laner. 5, 1, and 3 for the Zeus.
You know, there's an age-old adage, Gormizer. If at first you don't succeed, try again. I don't want to see the Solar Scarabs 4-stacked on a red buff just about ever again, at least in this match, because twice now the Tartarus Titans from behind have squashed that aggression and turned the match around. Cyclone's been able to get the return kill on a Baronic, just trading out Aurora's life. Phenomenal for the Tartarus Titans, and from there were able to just barrel over the Solar Scarabs, chasing them all the way across the map, and even taking a tier 1 tower for their troubles. Layers able to take that one out in the duo lane, and now the Tartarus Titans, yet again, have completely shifted the game. Last time after the deicide, it was like a 200 gold lead. Gold still largely equal, but for the first time in a long time, Experience now back in favor of the Order. And, well, we're starting to reach that point where the Tartarus Titans draft is going to start outscaling in the team fight.
Primal Fury seems to be where the Scarabs might have their eyes. Healing from a roar. He's going to make sure that Paul's still in this. Low mana, not ults, or none of the ults coming back after that last fight. Finally getting off cooldown. He's going to be there for Paul. No beads available on Paul, and that's the only relic missing in the game right now. So a lot that could potentially happen all around this. Just depends on how aggressive either of these teams want to get. The longer it goes, the better it gets for the Titans, just based on pure cooldowns. But the Scarabs, Mifflin, they're getting awfully close to this red buff.
They are, but not quite in the red buff just yet, so I won't worry too much. All right, I'm worried.
Yeah, Aurora, half health. There's the root from Baronic, and it's going to be a split fight. Scream goes deep, and Scream takes a lot of damage. Paul alive, and is able to get the detonate. Scream is gone. Aurora, Layers still alive. Scary D, nowhere to go, and it's going to be at least 2 kills here for the Tartarus Titans to pick up another, and they're not done. Solar Troll goes forward. He's looking for a little bit more. A 2-man stun seems to be on its way. He's getting slowed down, separated, zoned out, inbound, brought in, and the damage is good again from Cyclone and Paul, and the Titans turn that one around.
Get him away from the red buff, man. Get him out of there. What the Solar Scarabs, they just keep going
They're
back.
just going for fire.
Yeah, I mean, they should. The Tartarus Titans dominated another team fight. 20 seconds left for all the Solar Scarabs to think about what they've done. Just fight somewhere else, bro. There are other places on the map to go. The Tartarus Titans dominant in this team fight. And Paul, yet again, showing why Zeus is so nearly impossible to dive. Drops Chain Lightning on his feet, drops Lightning Storm there as well, and Scream pops Aegis while staring at a wall, praying that Paul doesn't use Detonate properly. If that's your prayer on surviving, here's the thing. Paul's going to detonate you properly every single time. He's that good. And from there, the Tartarus Titans were very simply able to just roll over yet another team fight. Don't fight them there. Well, now you're not really able to fight just about anywhere because they've got Fire Giant on 5, but especially now, don't go to the red buff again.
Catastrophe for the Scarabs so far. Was once a 3,000 gold lead and a 6-1 kill lead, has now turned into a 4,000, almost 5K deficit in both gold and experience. And the kill lead 13-9 in favor of the Titans. A 17-minute Fire Giant and 3 minutes left on the power play. Scream able to come in and for a consolation prize, strip away some experience. But Mifflin, I mean, you're seeing a lot of it, mainly in mid. There's 2 levels there, 1 level for the solo laner. It's just Paul right now, 6-1-5. The damage output 11K. He is turning these fights around. There's a lot of CC, a lot of help around him, but it's his damage that's the spearhead for the Titans.
It is. Cyclone Spin having a phenomenal game himself at 4-1-5, 9 of 13 affected kills, and having only fallen once. Looks pretty good for the ADC. Hasn't even necessarily needed to rotate out of his lane too far because every fight he's been a part of has been at this
it's been right here.
insane red buff. Maybe a misplay from the Tartarus Titans to group up on the right-hand side, considering it's so far from their win condition, the red buff.
All they need is that zone. Whatever those walls are doing, that's what's been benefiting them. It's going to be a tier 1 tower over and right. Looks like a tier 1 tower pretty easily here in mid, grouping from the Scarabs. This is a wild question. 19 minutes in. Scarabs are looking for a defense around this tier 2. They have the numbers advantage. In fact, they're just going to go ahead and get aggressive. Scream's going to dunk on Paul. There's going to be the beats. There's going to be the ult. And it's just pure lockdown. Scream has nothing to show for it. And instead gets pushed out of there. TKO potentially on Paul, but the healing is good for the Titans. And now they're surging forward into the tier 2. Layers is going in with the heal. Stewart is low, and Stewart's going to get put down. No, the execute from Sot not going to connect. Good Aegis there from Stewart to try and livy that, but it's not going to stop it. Paul damage kills off Scary, and they're still pushing the tier 2. The Scarabs pushed back into their base and locked away. The Titans surging forward, and with this much time, they can just go for the end.
They might be able to.
It's
Inbound and right nearby.
Inbound has damage. Roots are there. Phoenix goes down, and they're moving forward into the Titan room. 19 minutes, 45 seconds. Inbound's going to make it back to the fountain. Baronic still here, but no ult to his name. And the Titans, they're going to pull out on this one. Don't feel confident enough with Scream up to try and take this fight fully.
Can't imagine why Scream would be able to dissuade the Tartarus Titans. Last time it was a perfect dunk onto Paul that was immediately answered by a death. This time though, Paul no beads. Can he juke it?
And there's gonna be the dunk, there's the damage, and it's enough, finally! Shutting down this Zeus and getting the kill. Solo Troll locked up, but not enough damage to kill him out. Medusa respawns, Scary D back in the fray. And with just 2 now missing jungle or Fire Giant buffs, the Titans are gonna fall back.
The Tartarus Titans, now nursing 7,000 gold, have removed the mid-Phoenix, so map state largely favoring them as well. Have got a little bit of time to play with until the Fire Giant respawns. Not sure there's anything left on the map that the Titans could have siege, so I think even in losing Paul, not a massive deal. The Solar Scarabs, though, have proven that they have got enough damage to shut down Paul, as long as they could work through that CC immunity first. Unfortunate circumstance is that once Paul respawns and gets into a position where he might be in a fight, those beads will be back up. So, one more time, can somebody from the Solar Scarabs force off that defensive relic? We've seen what happens when Scream does it. He just dies. It's pretty fast, comical even. Can Scary D get in there, close that gap with his blink, maybe put some threat into Paul? Is it up to Inbound, whether or not he can do it? Maybe even an ultimate from Baronic, just to force out something. Because it can't be Scream, not every single time. And so far, generally, it has been.
And Paul, I mean, at this point, you've got a lot of pin, you've got a lot of power, you've got everything you would want. I'm starting to think, man, I want to Magi. My beads aren't going to be enough. I want more CC immunity if possible. Pendulum of the Ages is his pick up right now to upgrade his starter. And he invests heavily into getting some cooldown on those beads. Well, I guess watch his build with great interest as the game goes on. He needs a little more gold to try and get anything that is going to append a 6th item onto this. So we'll see where he ends up. Solar Troll. Kind of aggressively positioned. Fire Giant's going to be back in about 10 seconds. So this is going to be the next fight. Inbound, stunned out, locked down. This is not where you want to die, and now it's a 4v5 no matter what for the Scarabs if they try to stand up at the FG.
It was going to be a 3v5, I suppose, because Scream's on the opposite side of the map, going to try and take out at least a tower, open up a win condition for his team. Easier said than done with Layers nearby. Layers, though, is he privy to the fact that 4 members of the Solar Scarabs are hovering on this side of the map. Doesn't seem to matter as long as you're able to pick up Fire Giant, and they will. The Tartarus Titans put it on 5 belts, and Layers keeps the tier 2 alive.
Yeah, that tier 2 not falling is a large trade favorable for the Titans. Look at this. They're grouping up immediately, going for the right side. Phoenix Gold Fury about to respawn. The Scarabs are going to be backing off here. And they're going to try to get back to base in time. It is going to be fast, but is it fast enough? Phoenix is going to take a long time to burn down. No backdoor protections being shredded. So they're going to instead turn their eyes, the Titans that is, over towards the jungle and to push up this fire minion wave. Inbounds respawned, so we're back to the 5-on-5.
Cyclone Spin drops his ultimate into Phoenix just to make sure that Scary D cannot blink forward and cage anybody in. Maybe a little bit of an overcommitment on that cooldown. Cyclone Spin's ult, very good in the team fight, but I suppose had Scary D been allowed to blink forward, potentially could have turned around that fight. Scream had just made his way back to base and should be able to rejoin with that ultimate, so a good call from Cyclone Spin to keep his boys alive. Pressure still up. It's Layers in mid. Mid Phoenix going to respawn shortly. 4 stack on right. How's the defense look from the Scarabs?
Well, Paul's bead check, they're up, and that's all that matters, I think, for the Titans right now. Like you said, a defense check going on. Mid Phoenix is about to respawn. Layers already positioned. Should turn his attention to that. That should fall down pretty quickly. No, he's not going to be able to get good walls from Scary D. They're trying to lock him down. CC immunity from the Shiva gets him out of there. He's got Fireman. He's coming to assist him inbound. Takes a lot of damage here, but it's not enough to get the kill. Stewart with it. Petrify. Turns it around. Kills off the Zeus. Scream is able to find the dive that is necessary. And the beads were up. They just didn't have the safety in time. Solar Troll is gone. And it's 2 good kills for the Scarabs. They lose Baronic, but they can find Layers. Fire minions on the Titan, but the fight going well. Finally, the damage is there, and they're able to kill off Layers. But look, they're so low. Cyclone, he jumps in, he finds 2, and he's looking for a little bit more. Stewart forced to run back to the fountain, but they've got the minions, they've got the Suns, and they might have the damage to end this game. No, they have to back off. It's 2. The damage is still being poured out. Titan half health, falling. It's a duo lane matchup under the Titan roar.
Surely
takes a lot here. Cyclone Spin tries to do it. No, the Titan puts in work, and so does Stewart. Double kill, and they stall this one out.
The battle of the dual lanes may go to the Solar Scarabs with the unofficial 3rd man in the Titan. Not sure how valuable it is, though. That Titan is on its last legs. The Tartarus Titans, on the other hand, well, it's going to be a little while to get started up another power play. Having removed the right and center Phoenix, though, I don't think you need Fire Giant to start your siege on the tier 2. Once they respawn, should be able to regroup, start working their way towards that Gold Fury in tier 2 and Phoenix in their own time. That said, the Solar Scarab should be proud of being able to stop that aggression, and I think got to give credit over to, and you've heard me say it before, Scream. My man is a scalpel in these team fights. Clinical precision, removing the problem children of the Tartarus Titans. Paul was eviscerated by that Anvil of Dawn. From there, Trelly Relly's concerns on the desk, well, were well-founded. There was no survival potential for the Thor. He decided, it's a 1-for-1 trade, I might as well get the best trade possible, and he takes out Paul.
Oh, he's looking.
That's tough.
For some vision. Yeah, no one's nearby, so that Anvil
Did Paul
of
just
Dawn
clap at him?
is going to go up and then down. Beads up for Paul. He didn't use them during that last live. Scream goes dunking. And I don't know if they know they're behind them. No, it's going to be a split fight, split engagement. Baronic is the target. A lot of damage already dropped onto him, but he's still alive for now. Layers is able to get that last hit, and there's the damage from Paul. Cyclone Spin, credit for the kill onto Scream, but it is just lights out for the Scarabs. Stewart, the only one left. Ult down, relics down, health bar, well, it's still there for now, but how long can it last? That Titan's just a few hits away. The Titans are chasing the kill. 3 of them going for the end. They're going to take this one 2-0 as they finalize the deicide, take the Titan 26.5 in. I think that's the same timer as game 1.
Look, the Solar Scarabs make the right decision in that they cannot defend their base there. Had the Tartarus Titans been given any opportunity to even approach the base, had they gotten into the Phoenix line, 2 auto attacks from Cyclone Spin, like 1 ability from Paul, is all it would have taken to kill that Titan. So, right in their decision to try and take a fight in neutral territory, wrong in initiating with Thor's ultimate.
Yeah.
Understood to scream that every fight that went their way, the Solar Scarabs' way, was off the back of a great Anvil of Dawn, but you gotta get vision first. you gotta know somebody's there, because once you use it, well, the team fight was pretty clearly lost.
I think a valiant effort from the Scarabs. Again, I think devastating is the way I would describe a lot of the engagements for them that game. 3K gold lead, all of a sudden a wipe. Finally get another lead, a huge wipe. Things like that, where it's just leads into falls, into falls, into falls. And finally the Titan goes down. The Titans themselves stand up 2-0, and that closes out this set. We'll break that down, talk to the Titans right after this.
cheer you up, but never on your good days. I wasn't worth that much. You told me I was special, but not enough to make you stay. I guess you couldn't settle with somebody like me. My self-esteem has reached a new all-time low. At least you accomplished something, yeah. Before you, I was doing good on my own. If only I just hadn't been so wrong.
Just like every other set we've had so far this weekend, the Tartarus Titans end this one in 2 up against the Solar Scarabs. Another kind of back and forth game to kind of start this one out here. Is looking a little bit shaky for the Titans, but once again, we get to see just how dangerous Zeus is in the hands of a Zeus Master out here. Paul got to play a pick that he commanded in Game 1 and got to, well, just destroy again in Game number 2, Charlie. There's not much more I can really go with beyond there because you can't keep giving this god to Paul. He is just playing out of his mind on it, and teams are just not adapting to it.
Yeah, the Titans may have taken the physical victory very late on the game, but the mental victory in my head was won when Layers had 1 HP at that red buff, gets body blocked by inbound, and then Aurora does like 3 riptides, whoops him out, and then he just gets out. And at that point, I was like, this game's over, 2-0, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, that early one was definitely hurting on the mental for the Scarabs there. They were able to bounce back and make some solid plays to keep themselves in the game, and we're sitting here 14 minutes in and they're up, but this little team fight here is kind of where it all turns back around. Again, Paul is allowed to sit back and free cast in these fights on Zeus, something we talk about all the time. And look how long this team fight went, and Paul had still held on to ultimate throughout all of that there. I mean, that's just a testament to how much Paul is able to just sit comfortably during these fights.
Yeah, it's also a testament to how much damage Zeus can do without expending that ultimate. Chain Lightning, when you're grouped up in a 5v5 setting, is just so much AoE damage. You don't have to use that ult until you want to try to peel for yourself, have some space control, or if you're Paul, just use it to chase down some kills. Few detonate charges will do the trick, and yeah, I said it before, you can't be giving Paul Zeus unless you have an answer for it, and unfortunately the Thor was not a great answer, as I mentioned on the desk. It's one of those things where Scream looked great on Thor, I can't lie. He was doing some awesome plays, the ults were solid, but you're always going to trade out your life late game. If you're going to use your hammer for damage, it's going to end up with a pretty one-sided trade.
And one of those things that Paul and a lot of the carries here in the league are known for is how well their relic usage is, and that last little highlight right there is a good testament to just how well Paul can manage those relics in the middle of a very cluttered team fight. I mean, you're staring down 3 people, that being a Kabrakan, a Thor, and a Terra, and he held on to his bees until the last moment where he needed it. Held on to his Aegis till the last moment that he needed it there and was able to pull out and find a kill in that fight, and not only that, be able to survive throughout all of that. Look at the damage numbers out here by this guy. I mean, 8,000 plus over the next person on his team out here, and highest in the lobby, 26,000 from Paul.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Your positioning has to be pristine if you are picking this Zeus right now, but as long as your tanks are doing their job, which I think Aurora and SOT are always creating space, even Layers in that regard was kind of a pseudo-tank. So I think as long as the positioning is on point and your tanks are creating space for you, Paul's going to be able to do this whenever he wants, unless there's an answer for it. Daji is always banned away when they pick it, and they just make sure that it's not going to be an option.
Yeah, there wasn't much of an answer out here out of the Solar Scarabs. We'll have to get some answers, though, from the support of the Tartarus Titans and maybe some of his thoughts on the set here. I've got Aurora standing by for our post-game interview. First off, congrats on your 2-0 win here today. Your next matchup is going to be against the Bolts, and then you got the Oni Warriors to kind of end the season out. How have you guys felt about your performance so far throughout this first half of the year?
Pretty good so far. I feel like as a team we can get a lot better. That game 1 today, I wasn't really happy with how I played, but that happens. Game 2 is good though, so I think we're getting better every week, and it's good to just see the improvements. And like a game like Game 2 is always good because we were down early and then we were able to fight back into the game and with just communicating with each other and making plays. So it was really good.
Yeah, talk about that play that happened around the red buff early on. I mean, Charlie talked about it a moment ago, all those riptides to get Layers out there. I mean, what kind of crazy comms going between you and Layers there whenever he was able to make it out?
Yeah, I don't remember actually the comms there. But the one at red buff, it's really good communication between Paul and Layers on the, just able to kill them all, even though we're at such a deficit. I think Thor was like level 11 or level 12 when Layers was level 8, and I think Purse had a level lead. And I think they had like a couple levels across the board on us, and Layers caught Scream's hammer, and then it just made it really easy from there.
Yeah, you guys really do seem to also like this, Shiva. You're one of the only teams in the league still kind of consistently running out here. Is it just a pick that really kind of just flows with Layers real well?
Yeah, he likes it, so it's fun. So that's all it is.
Yeah, fun pick to play, fun pick to watch out here. It's a good set from you guys. Congrats on your win. I'll let you get back to the team to celebrate. Thanks for stopping by for the interview.
Thank you.
Just a fun pick in general, and just fun across the board here. But I think Aurora brings up a good point there. It's something that we talk about with teams when you go down early on into the game, especially against a team like the Scarabs who love playing this early game. Being able to bounce back is always the most important thing. Being able to come back from these 2-3K deficits is such an important factor for that one here. But that's our first set of the day between the Titans and the Scarabs. We still got 2 more to go. Yeah, believe it or not, we still have a few more sets out here for you today. Let's take a look at the schedule, see what those are. It's going to be the Olympus Bolts and the Jade Dragons for our second set of the day. And then right after that, we'll have the Oni Warriors up against the Camelot Kings. But so far, Charlie, all of our sets have been 2-0. I can't imagine this next one being a 2-0.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine the Bolts 2-0ing I mean, there's so much right now that's crazy. That's what I'm saying. So going into this, sure, we can't imagine either of these teams 2-0ing. It's going to be a competitive set. But right now, it really just depends on where you can find your pressure and which team just shows up to party. I mean, I couldn't imagine the Titans 2-0ing the Kings. I couldn't imagine a lot of these 2-0. So I just think the league is so competitive right now, and you're right to highlight it. Going in, you're expecting a very competitive match, but it really just depends on who shows up, how the picks and bands goes, that sort of thing. I'm very excited, though, to see the Oni Warriors and the Camelot Kings set. I mean, for a while, the Oni Warriors were looking pretty cold, then looked extremely hot. They were able to prove that the Leviathans could breathe. They could take them down. And then the Camelot Kings, who were on top, also got beat. So it's just crazy competitive set right now.
Yeah, the lead keeps swinging back and forth up to here. Right now, the Titans and the Bolts are sitting at the top of the standings, 3-1. A piece between them. Right behind them, the Leviathans and the Kings. Then rounding out the bottom 4, Dragons, Warriors, Scarabs, and Valkyries, who have yet to be able to find a set win so far here in Phase 1 of Season 9. But not to be shy of the fact that Valkyries have at least been able to find some of the individual games in their sets out here. But yeah, I think you're right to highlight. I mean, this is a very competitive league. I mean, last year was very competitive, but it's gotten even closer now to where before we were looking at, okay, who's our top 4? Now it's like, wow, our top 6 are really close.
Yeah, I mean, you can't even look at these matchups going in and say, oh, well, this is a clear edge here. They have this lead here. It's insane at how much is undetermined right now. We really don't know who's the best team in the league. We see who's on the options table, but it depends on who shows up on the day.
Well, set 1 is done. We got set 2 right around the corner. It's going to be the Olympus Bolts and the Jade Dragons. That one's going to be happening right after this break.